when I was going to go off on my own, I really wanted to hold out until I met a company that really understood who I was as an artist, respected where I was coming from with my artistic opinion, and didn't want to like change me too much, and definitely was going to make me a priority and like a focus at their label, and RCA was ready to do that, so I was really happy with my decision to go with them.
RCA Records is an American record label owned by Sony Music Entertainment. Sony owns 3 other prominent labels you've probably heard of: Columbia Records, Arista Records, and Epic Records. RCA, which stands for Radio Corporation of America, was officially acquired by Sony in 2008. RCA owns the catalogs of musical greats like David Bowie, Elvis Presley, Nina Simone, and Diana Ross. Currently, RCA is the home of multiple of music's biggest names, including Britney Spears, Miley Cyrus, SZA, Doja Cat, Normani, Khaled, Zayn, and Becky G. In its earliest form, RCA was known as the Victor Talking Machine Company, which was founded in 1901. RCA is the second oldest record label in the country, just behind Columbia Records. In 1929, the Radio Corporation of America purchased the Victor Talking Machine Company and rebranded as RCA Victor. RCA Victor would continue to make records and phonographs. In 1931, they merged with a British company to form what would later become the parent company of EMI Records. RCA wanted to reach as broad an audience as possible, leading them to venture into genres that weren't popular or respected at the time, like jazz and blues. In the early 20th century, jazz and blues were popular among Black and low-income communities and weren't viewed as legitimate music genres. Still, RCA recognized that there is an untapped market and was the first label to record and distribute jazz and blues records. RCA was also credited with helping make rock and roll popular in the 40s and 50s. Their ability to cheaply produce records meant that teens could afford them, as they were the largest demographic listening to rock music. RCA was the first label to sign Little Richard, but it was signing Elvis Presley that helped them dominate the rock market. To this day, Elvis has been the most successful artist to come from RCA. RCA has always attempted to modernize how people listen to music, whether it was through radio broadcasts in the 20s, introducing a more compact record in the 60s, or introducing the 8-track tape in the 70s. RCA has been a large part of music evolution in the past century, playing a large role in how music is recorded, listened to, and promoted. Despite their influence on music, RCA's entire story hasn't been smooth sailing. They've had multiple conflicts with artists, many of which resulted in the artist being barred from releasing music, often resulting in the decline of the artist's career or them leaving the label entirely. In 1987, country star Kenny Rogers left RCA after only 4 years. When he joined the label in 1983, he'd received a $20 million advance, the biggest for any country artist at the time. The label made questionable moves like failing to release a lead single that went number 1 in the US as the lead single for the same album abroad. By the time Rogers left RCA, he was under the impression that they were trying to ruin his career. Though these conflicts with RCA have been going on for decades, RCA has gained notoriety among music fans in the last couple of years. Over time, musicians have been able to be more open with their fans through avenues like social media and interviews. This has given them the platform to discuss problems that they've had with RCA. Since it seems like these issues are frequent and take on similar patterns, fans have begun to call it the RCA Curse. The RCA Curse basically means that an artist who signs with RCA Records may be artistically stunted because of some of the label's shady tactics and doomed to not reach their full potential. Over the years, RCA has gained the reputation of mismanaging their artists and failing to promote them properly. It's gotten to the point that hearing one's favorite artist signed to RCA is usually met with fear and disappointment rather than excitement. Please remember that all of this is alleged and that the RCA Curse at the end of the day is basically just a fan theory. Whether the RCA Curse does or doesn't exist, that doesn't mean that RCA Records hasn't produced successful artists or that every artist under the label faces these problems. In addition, since it's mostly a fan theory, a lot of this information comes from fan threads, and the fans have looked at the labels and the artists' actions and pieced a lot of their theories together. So while I'll be looking at articles and direct quotes from the artists, some of the actual analysis comes from fan threads since there's obviously no real confirmation that the RCA Curse exists. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's take a look at some of the artists who have been said to suffer from the RCA Curse. After leaving One Direction in 2015, Zayn Malik embarked on a solo career. He expressed he wanted his music to take on a more experimental R&B sound than he'd been able to do with One Direction. Shortly after leaving 1D, Zayn signed with RCA, hoping to gain the artistic freedom that he'd longed for. Zayn's solo debut album, Mind of Mine, was a commercial success, peaking at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It wasn't until Zayn was gearing up to release his sophomore album, Icarus Falls, that things seemed to take a turn. Peter Edge, the CEO of RCA, had said that the album would be released sometime in 2017. In November of 2017, Zayn said that the album wasn't complete because he kept finding different songs that he wanted to add. By the next year, though, his tune had changed. In March of 2018, Zayn released a song that he said via Twitter he'd never intended to put out. He claimed an unidentified someone had threatened to leak the song due to reasons of unprofessionalism. Using the word unprofessionalism made fans suspect that it was RCA that Zayn was referring to. Many fans have come to believe that RCA was behind leaking songs from Icarus Falls. In November of that year, Zayn responded to fans asking for an Icarus Falls release date by outright saying that his label was holding him back. Icarus Falls was eventually released the next month in December of 2018. However, because of constant changes in the album's release date, there wasn't much promotion for it. There was also a huge gap between the single releases and the release dates of the album, which killed a lot of excitement for it. The first single was released back in April, and the album didn't come out until the end of the year. Icarus Falls only peaked at 61 in the United States and 77 in the UK. This was a 180 from how well Mind of Mine did, and the album genuinely isn't bad. Since Icarus Falls is a double album, it's very long, which unfortunately makes it hard to view it as a cohesive body of work. A lot of the songs are enjoyable, and there really aren't any bad songs on the album, but a lot of them do come off as fillers. There are multiple Twitter threads detailing how Zayn was potentially sabotaged by RCA. The threads allege that RCA was purposely holding Zayn back from releasing music, and that they'd been the reason it took so long for Icarus Falls to come out. Based on the lack of tattoos in the video for one of the songs, All That, fans were able to figure out that the video had likely been filmed back in 2016. However, the video wasn't released until March of 2017, which was still pretty far from the December 2018 release of the album. Aside from RCA being accused of sabotaging the rollout for Icarus Falls, they were also accused of not sending any of the singles from the album to radio stations to promote after its release. RCA also made very limited physical copies of the album available, which hurt sales. In some countries, fans weren't able to buy a physical copy at all until well after the album was released. The Twitter thread also alleges that Zayn was being painted as ungrateful, difficult, and disinterested in the late 2020s, and all of that was engineered by Simon Cowell, who was also behind his solo deal with RCA. The deal Simon brokered between Zayn and RCA was apparently restrictive, and it was never intended to give Zayn the artistic freedom that he was after. Rather, it was supposedly intended to punish him for leaving One Direction, as well as make sure he wouldn't be any real competition for the group. Allegedly, the media had also been blocked from reporting anything positive about Zayn in an effort to destroy his public image after leaving One Direction. In February of 2020, Zayn announced via Twitter that he didn't have any new music or collaborations in the works. He made a statement after having been made aware by fans that RCA was allegedly sending his vocals to producers to make song remixes without his consent. The situation made #FreeZayn trend on Twitter as fans demanded that he be freed from RCA. Zayn was eventually freed from RCA in late 2021, but it seems like external circumstances forced their hand. Zayn was dropped from the label after an altercation with Yolanda Hadid, the mother of his ex Gigi. Zayn pled no contest to 4 counts of harassment after he allegedly pushed Yolanda during an argument concerning the daughter that he shared with Gigi. He received 360 days probation as a result of the incident. Sources used the situation to mention that Zayn had apparently been on a downward spiral despite efforts from many to help him get his career back on track. As of now, it seems like Zayn is spending most of his energy being a father, that is, when he's not putting Liam Payne in his place. Liam rudely implied that Zayn's upbringing was to blame for his behavior, and that's why he had sympathy for him despite not liking him. In response, Zayn set the internet on fire by uploading a video of himself belting the high note in You and I, 'Cause you and a shady nod to Liam's failed attempts to do so after Zayn left One Direction. Hopefully now that Zayn's free from RCA, he gets everything sorted and releases music whenever he's ready. He's such a strong artist vocally that I think if he can rehab his image, he truly does have a successful career ahead of him. One of the most cited examples of the RCA curse is Tinashe. She famously struggled under the label for years, having many scrapped albums and eras, despite clearly being a talented entertainer. What was most attractive about Tinashe was that it seemed like she was going to revive the era of R&B, where artists both sang and executed choreography with backup dancers. After leaving her group The Stunners, Tinashe worked as an independent artist for a little while. She released several mixtapes and signed with RCA Records in 2012. She was only around 19 at the time. In the summer of 2014, Tinashe released 2 On, her first single from her debut album. The song entered the Billboard charts at number 89 and eventually peaked at 24. I feel like this is one of those niche songs where if you were more in the hip-hop R&B space at the time, this song was everywhere, and you definitely couldn't go to a party without hearing it. Both of her next singles, Pretend and All Hands on Deck, failed to chart on Billboard. Again, I'm pretty shocked because from my perspective, All Hands on Deck was at least popular. In the fall of 2014, Tinashe released her debut album, Aquarius. It peaked at number 17 on the Billboard 200 and at number 2 on the top R&B albums chart. Tinashe later revealed that RCA had made her change the cover art for Aquarius. When she submitted the image that she wanted, her choice was denied for the cover. The image Tinashe originally chose is featured instead on the back of the album. The main source of conflict between RCA and Tinashe appears to be creative differences. Tinashe has always wanted to dive into the more experimental R&B sound, and RCA seemed to want her to have a more mainstream and marketable image. Tinashe accused the label of suppressing her artistic expression. In 2015, she began to promote her sophomore album, Joyride. Tinashe went on multiple interviews and a tour was announced. However, before it was released, she released Night Ride, a completely different EP. It was said that Night Ride was released instead in order to give her more time to rework Joyride and hold fans over until the release. Night Ride had hits like Company and Ride of Your Life, and it had a more electronic, experimental sound than her previous album. Night Ride only peaked at number 89 on the Billboard 200. Due to its poor performance, RCA didn't count Night Ride as an album and instead considered it an EP. According to them, this is why Night Ride never received a tour. Tinashe has since come out and said that she considers Night Ride an album and that it wasn't promoted because it wasn't the sort of music that RCA wanted her to make. Despite this, the album received positive reviews and Tinashe had writing credits on every song except for Company. In 2016, Tinashe recalled being forced to record a song that had lyrics and a message that she didn't agree with. She also said that while working with producers and songwriters, she was often ignored when she tried to say she didn't like the direction her music was going in. It seems RCA has always wanted Tinashe to play up her sex appeal and revolve her music around it, when that's never seemed to be the direction that Tinashe wanted to take. Whenever she tried to speak up, she said that she was ignored. Tinashe said that the experiences were humiliating and made her cry. Tinashe's next single was Super Love, and it seemed like the song would finally send her to the mainstream. It was an upbeat summer song with the typical beach aesthetic and catchy musings of summer love. The choreography was flirty and sexy, but it still had a lighthearted vibe. It had all of the makings of a summer smash with its 90s pop influence and lifeguard-themed music video. Again, the song earned positive reviews from critics, yet somehow Super Love didn't propel Tinashe to the top of the charts. The general consensus is again that RCA failed to properly promote Super Love. When Super Love was released, it was intended to be the lead single off of Joyride. Fans were unsure why the label wouldn't promote a lead single, especially since the song sounded like it was created just to secure Tinashe a mainstream hit. She didn't go on the talk show circuit to promote the song or do any other televised performances. It's really sad because this song would have been perfect for a VMA performance. Joyride wouldn't come out until 2018, and it only debuted at number 58 on the Billboard 200. Tinashe still hadn't been given many opportunities to promote. She had a loyal fan base, but with her talent and the quality of her music, Tinashe should have already been a household name. Reviews of Joyride called it fragmented and incohesive despite it having good songs. In retrospect, this was probably because of the creative struggle that Tinashe was in, as well as the songs being created over 3 years. Still, the consensus remained that Tinashe was talented. Reviews of Joyride mentioned the confusing fact that despite releasing solid music, Tinashe still hadn't achieved superstardom. She was talented and her music was well received, so what exactly was holding her back? Many believe that it was RCA holding Tinashe back. She was never promoted properly, and disagreements over her sound caused long hiatuses between projects. Later in 2018, Tinashe released 2 singles from her upcoming album, Nashe. The album would have a more hip-hop sound as it was meant to embody her alter ego. However, Nashe was canceled by RCA due to poor performance of the first 2 singles. At the beginning of 2019, Tinashe announced that she was leaving RCA Records. Her manager said that her split from the label would finally give her creative control. Neither Tinashe nor RCA said explicitly that the split was due to any mismanagement. Tinashe released Songs for You, her first independent album through her own label. The songs Link Up, Cash Race, and Feelings had been intended for Nashe and are honestly some of the best songs on the album. Tinashe was praised for her songwriting, production, and for being brave enough to go independent. She seemed to enjoy this era a lot more since she was finally able to make the music that she wanted. Songs for You hit number 1 on the Apple Music charts, making Tinashe the first independent artist to do so since Frank Ocean released Blonde in 2016. Tinashe announced a Songs for You tour, and more than half of the tickets sold out in a week. Unfortunately, the tour was planned for 2020, so it had to be postponed. Last August, Tinashe released her 5th studio album, 333. She released 3 singles in promotion for the album. It was critically acclaimed and found itself in the top 20 of many publications' best albums of 2021 lists. Tinashe finally went on tour in late 2021. Due to high demand for tickets, extra dates were added. I'm glad Tinashe is finding success and didn't let RCA to convince her to change her sound. It's admirable how true she's remained to herself in her artistry, and I hope she still has a shot to make it big because she genuinely deserves it. I won't spend a whole bunch of time on Normani because I've already made a video on her, so please feel free to check that out if you want a really in-depth explanation of what's going on with her. After Fifth Harmony broke up in 2018, Normani signed to RCA Records. A lot of her fans were excited for her debut because she had shown that she was one to watch in Fifth Harmony. Normani's talent was endorsed by the likes of Beyonce, Nicki Minaj, and Janet Jackson. At the beginning of her career, she'd released singles with Sam Smith and Khaled, both of which were hits. Normani's song with Sam Smith peaked at number 4 on the Hot 100. Love Lies, the collab with Khaled, went number 1 on the US pop radio and peaked at number 9 on the Hot 100. Normani told fans she was working on her debut album, which would come in early 2019. The album didn't come in 2019, but Normani did release Motivation that summer. Though the song only peaked at number 33 on the Hot 100, her fans enjoyed it and it increased anticipation for her debut album. Normani performed Motivation at the VMAs, which only increased excitement. Fans assumed RCA would capitalize on Motivation's popularity and drop Normani's album, yet no album came. In the meantime, Normani collaborated with artists like Ariana Grande and Megan Thee Stallion. When asked about her album, she said that she was working hard on it and wanted the project to be a proper introduction of her as a soloist. The pandemic, as well as her mother's breast cancer diagnosis, pushed Normani's album back further. Fans began to wonder something deeper was at play than Normani simply taking her time to do her best work. It had been almost 2 years since she announced her album, and fans still hadn't received an official title or track list. A lot was expected from Normani since she'd shown in the few performances she'd done that she was capable of having a successful solo career. Some fans speculated it wasn't Normani delaying the project, but RCA Records. Allegedly, RCA hadn't been satisfied with the performance of Normani's singles and wanted her music to chart better before releasing an album. In 2021, Normani released Wild Side with Cardi B. It peaked at number 14 on the Billboard charts, meaning Normani still didn't have a number 1 hit. Wild Side took a tumble on the charts after the song was accidentally removed from Apple Music. Interestingly, this mishap happened shortly after Normani mentioned she'd funded the music video herself. Her label mate Zayn had said the same thing about some of his music videos too. Not all of Normani's fans believe that RCA is actively sabotaging her. Others believe that RCA had predicted her to chart better than she did and is simply delaying her debut due to lack of faith in her right now. There's no real point in a label releasing an album if they don't think it'll do big numbers. Still, Normani is losing valuable time to promote and to grow as an artist if this is true. Others believe that Normani is being purposely shelved and RCA never intended to promote her heavily. Sometimes record labels sign artists just to prevent them from competing with artists that they've signed already. For example, and this is all alleged, if RCA wants Doja Cat to be as successful as possible, it would be to their benefit to sign artists who could give her competition like Normani. If not, Normani could be promoted by a different label and potentially outsell Doja Cat. If a label controls an artist, they can also control how much competition they are to their label mates. Similar to Tinashe, Normani has struggled to establish a distinct sound of her own. I think with Tinashe though, she knew what her sound was and was suppressed by RCA. With Normani, I think she's still yet to discover exactly what sound she wants. Because of this, her discography sounds disjointed, especially since she hasn't made an album or an EP, so we're just getting one song at a time. Another reason fans believe Normani is stalling at RCA is because Tunji Balogun, the exec who signed her, left RCA. Normani was the first artist Tunji signed to Keep Cool, his joint venture with RCA. Last August, he left RCA to work for Def Jam. It can't mean well for Normani that the person who signed her left the label, because he probably would have been the biggest person in her corner pushing her to be promoted. Other fans have said that Normani's current situation is her own doing, and it doesn't seem like putting out music is her priority. Less and less fans are believing that she spent the past 4 years pouring her soul into her debut, and that she truly could have released an album by now if she were serious about it. Others have pointed out that Normani doesn't really use her platform to promote her music like her contemporaries like Lizzo, Doja Cat, and Chloe Bailey do. Fans have also noticed that despite being allegedly stifled by her label, Normani hasn't put out any mixtapes, as is normal for artists in her situation who are desperate to release music. Normani isn't that active on her social media, and she doesn't really do her posts much to make fans want to engage with her beyond liking a pretty picture. Fans believe that label-mate Doja Cat was a perfect example of an artist who used social media to help her get out of the RCA dungeon. Once she went viral for hits like Moo, RCA started paying her more attention and promoting her more. An artist shouldn't necessarily have to do this, but it does show that if Normani truly wanted to get her music out there any way possible, social media is a viable option. Reading the thread about her, I was surprised to see a lot of people say that they just felt that Normani was a letdown as far as RCA was concerned. Normani didn't do the chart-topping numbers the label was expecting, and as a result, they had no urgency to release her album. Wild Side and Fair, which are singles on the album, were good, but not necessarily memorable in the eyes of a lot of fans. It also seems like Normani doesn't have any urgency on her part to put out music, or even keep fans up to date with the making of her album. It seems like her career boils down to a mix of mismanagement, her songs not meeting expectations, and Normani being somewhat disinterested in putting out music, whether she'll admit it or not. Most recently, Normani has been in hot water for appearing in Chris Brown's Warm Embrace music video. With his history, a lot of fans considered her appearance to be in poor taste. Now, we don't know exactly how much control Normani had over this, but it doesn't look good. Especially doesn't look good when Normani is already on thin ice with a lot of her fans because she's yet to release her album. In my Normani video I posted back in April, I was optimistic that her album was coming this summer. Between then and now, we still haven't gotten a title, track list, cover, or release date. Because of that, and because the Beyonce release is coming in July, I'm not so sure that we'll get the Normani album this summer. I did also want to take a second and mention a few cases that didn't get a lot of social media attention at the time, just because social media wasn't as big when they happened. In 2007, Kelly Clarkson released her album, My December. The creation of the album wasn't without conflict, as Clarkson had feuded publicly with Clive Davis, the head of Sony, which, remember, owns RCA. Clarkson was told to change the songs on her album, as Davis didn't believe songs like Because of You would be hits. Despite having already sold millions of records, Clarkson wasn't trusted to choose the songs for her own album, and she claims the label tried to bully her into changing them. Despite arguments over the album potentially halting her career for good, Kelly stood her ground, and My December went platinum. Her treatment during the making of the album resulted in her leaving RCA Records. Avril Lavigne too had trouble with RCA when trying to release her fourth album, Goodbye Lullaby, in 2010. Her last album, The Best Damn Thing, was released back in 2007, and she said RCA was to blame for the large gap between releases. About her conflicts with RCA, she said, "For the first time, I experienced a bunch of bureaucratic BS. People do their best work when they're doing what they want, love, and is natural for them, not when you're forcing them to be something that they're not. From the beginning of my career, my message has always been to be yourself and stand up for what you believe in. Follow your heart." It seems that this is a common theme with a lot of the struggling RCA artists, that the sound that's true to them isn't the sound that RCA wants from them. Avril wanted to make more laid-back, deeper songs, but RCA wanted her to go in a more pop, radio-friendly direction. Her lead single, What the Hell, definitely sounds like a generic mainstream pop song. It's catchy and people enjoyed it, but it doesn't seem like the song Avril would have put out with full creative control. Her previous album had the massive hit Girlfriend on it, so it wasn't her first foray into radio pop. Still, that had been seen as a deviation from form, not an introduction to a new sound from Avril. She said herself that now that she was older, she was over the pop rock aggressive boy bashing sound and wanted her music to take on a less pop rock, more stripped down direction than RCA wanted. Aside from What the Hell, the other songs in Goodbye Lullaby are a lot slower. Lavigne said that her album had been done a year prior to its release, and arguments with the label delayed that release. Goodbye Lullaby was finally released in March of 2011. Avril said the only conflict she faced while making it was RCA trying to convince her to make her album sound more like the other mainstream pop that was popular at the time. All in all, I do think there's some merit to there being a noticeable pattern of RCA not promoting their artists to the fullest and wasting a lot of their potential. It's sad to see, especially when an artist thinks that they finally made it big and will get some level of artistic freedom. It seems like the RCA curse is most real for artists who don't fit RCA's image of how they wanted to market them. Anytime artists express wanting to go in a different direction than what RCA intended, it seems to lead to their projects being shelved either for a while or indefinitely. It also seems odd that RCA is quick to shelve projects due to poor sales, but doesn't promote a lot of their artists well enough to achieve the sales that they seem to be after. There have been multiple instances of RCA not making enough copies of albums available or keeping the songs on streaming services, both of which affect an artist's performance on the charts. In addition, shifting around release dates and pushing back projects negatively affects the artist's performance too. For the most part, it seems like artists are able to regain at least somewhat creative control when they leave RCA. So if Normani is serious about her music career, I do hope she's making moves to leave RCA. RCA definitely isn't the only label who has a reputation of being shady, and it's not the only label that artists have spoken out against. I think RCA is just such an interesting case because they have such a clear pattern of making similar mistakes with their artists. I also think RCA's treatment of their artists has gotten so much attention genuinely because a lot of Stan Twitter's faves are managed by RCA. And once Stan Twitter gets even a crumb of drama, they're gonna take it and run with it. I don't always think this is a bad thing though, because sometimes fans are able to speak out in ways that artists can't because they're in contracts. Also, please remember that the RCA curse isn't confirmed, but more so a fan theory that's been put together after a pattern of artists having bad experiences with RCA. So while a lot of the situations speak for themselves, RCA has never come out and said that they're intentionally sabotaging artists or that any of these fans' theories are true. Still, if you want to read any of the threads to see how fans came to their conclusions and some of their evidence, I linked the threads that I read for this video below. Regardless, it is still sad to see this from a label that seemed in its early days to want to revolutionize music. In the beginning, it looked like RCA wanted to represent a wide array of artists that might not have been otherwise supported. Now it seems like RCA wants a lot of its artists to be more cookie cutter than creative. In my opinion, it hurts the music industry to have every artist churning out the same generic pop when there are so many artists out there who are capable of putting out innovative music and succeeding at it. Let me know your thoughts on the RCA curse. Do you believe it's real? Do you think RCA is genuinely at fault here, or are there gray areas? Let me know what you think down in the comments, and as always, I'll see you soon. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and let me know what you'd like to see next. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye!